Anything going on today? Probably not. Let's talk about the playoffs. There's a little bit going on. Welcome to another edition of Inside Coverage on Yahoo, a Tuesday edition here after the completion of the wild card round, and a Tuesday edition in which we take the air. Hi, my name is Andrew Siciliano, by the way, the how and the why, any and everything you need to know about the National Football League. We're here Monday through Thursday, a day in which we take the air with Charles Robinson and Frank Schwab, our senior NFL writers, just with 9 head coaching vacancies, the latest of which actually happened. I didn't believe it was actually going to happen. I mean, watching the Steelers get their doors blown off in the fourth quarter last night, you thought it was time. But C-Rob, Frank, hello to both of you. I didn't think Mike Tomlin would actually do it. C-Rob, let's go. Where were you? Oral history. Where were you when you heard the news?
I was here at home, and my phone instantly started lighting up, and I thought, okay, either LaFleur happened in Green Bay, or somebody, Harbaugh's landed a job, or, I knew it was something. I was scared on the flight home yesterday, that word would leak out before the game that a decision had already been made. But I'm just curious, as Frank discusses where he was, and you do as well. I thought the ESPN broadcast was interesting last night because at the end, I was like, man, they're really treating this like this might be it for Tomlin. And it just makes me wonder during, the pre-post meetings, did Tomlin kind of suggest like, this is probably going to be it for me. Don't say it, but yeah, for both. Yeah, it really felt
Lisa
that way.
Salters came on and said, I think this is it. And Troy said, I think this is it. For Rodgers, at least.
Yeah, I mean, these guys get information that, as we've talked about, coaches and players, a little more looser with information in those production meetings. So you wonder, if something like that was up. I learned from a text from Andrew Siciliano, just all caps. Tom, you were the one to break the news. I was like, oh wow, this is impressive. But I don't want to sit here and act like this is the most surprising thing. That's oh my goodness, this happened, because this has been coming for a few years. Like, we didn't know, like you said, Andrew, if they were actually going to do it, because the Steelers just don't like it. But Tomlin stepping down almost makes a little bit of sense. And I mean, all last night just seemed like, wow, this is the end. You're just watching that game. What's the point in running this back? Just so you can go get the doors blown off you again in the wild card round next year, maybe trying to chase 9 wins again. It just seemed like this was a good time for it to just both sides get a new start.
Yeah, let's give Mike Tomlin his flowers, first of all. He's going to the Hall of Fame. He's a Super Bowl winning coach. He has 19 seasons there. He never had a losing season. He continued the legacy of Bill Cowher, who continued the legacy of Chuck Noll. Mike Tomlin is one of the greatest coaches of our generation. No matter how much angry Steeler fans want to point to the last 7, 8, 10 years and say he hasn't lived up to the standard, which he claimed is the standard, you're lucky to have him. He's a great coach. He can go do whatever the heck he wants to. Indications are it's likely TV. Wouldn't be surprised if he's sitting at the corner of Pico and Motor next year in L.A. on the Fox pregame set. But he can do that. He could podcast from his basement like Ben Roethlisberger is doing and passively aggressively take shots at people. Whatever he wants to do, he has earned the right to do it. And if he wants to be a coach again, the Steelers own his rights because he's walking away from time left on his contract. By all accounts, 2 years at a significant number of north of $20 million. He can't just go coach another team. But if he wants to, I'm sure they can work something out, and he could be back as a coach, whether it's this year, unlikely, or next year, far, far, far more likely. Also, say this, it kind of felt like it was time, because this team is at a crossroads. This team has, for 7 consecutive trips to the playoffs, not only lost, but during those 7 losses, at one point trailed by as many as 21 points, at least 21 points in all 7 of those losses. It is an old and expensive roster without a legitimate answer at quarterback for the foreseeable future. Cam Hayward is old. He's 37 years old. You traded for DK Metcalf. That is an onerous contract. You traded for Jonnu Smith. You added money, actually, to Cam's contract. You gave TJ Watt a massive new contract. He has 1 sack in those 7 playoff losses. This is a roster in desperate need of an overhaul. And C-Rob, it didn't work with Aaron Rodgers. I mean, it kind of worked what you thought it would. Like, it was what you thought it would be, which is they're good enough to get in, they're not good enough to win, and you're back at square one again.
Yeah, and I mean, I think we had this discussion, early in the season where we debated, okay, you pushed all your chips into this, and the roster is what it is. It's not wildly exciting. You pushed assets into the running game in the draft, and Caleb Johnson. You draft a guy like Jack Sawyer. It was, defensive. You're going to get a defensive tackle. I mean, there's all the pieces were really geared toward, hey, this is it. Like, we're going to treat this like a 1-year window. We'll see what happens. And I think, at least for me personally, I don't remember where you guys stood on at the beginning of the season. I thought, look, if you make the playoffs, okay, it's not the Super Bowl run that you expected, but realistically, seeing where Rodgers was as a player with the New York Jets in 2024, it was hard to envision them all of a sudden piecing together this miraculous playoff run. It's deflating the way they lost to the Houston Texans. The Houston Texans are really scary right now. That could end up being, the team that nobody sees going, into the Super Bowl, maybe a month ago, and now all of a sudden on the heels of that defense, maybe they are. But I will just say this about the Steelers. A lot of this, there's a velvet rut that happens sometimes in the NFL where you're really good and you're really good consistently, but you're just really never terrible. And when you're never terrible, you never have a shot to position yourself to go get a quarterback in the top 5, right? The top 6, the top 7 picks in the draft. And Mike Tomlin was the ace of spades of never being terrible. I mean, they were always at least at the waterline during his entire career. And I think that affected, especially post Ben Roethlisberger, that affected the ability to go out and get another quarterback. And I'll say this, whoever comes in next, it'll be interesting to see how 2026 is constructed. And I would note the 2027 draft is going to have, I think, some really interesting quarterback names in it. Lenora Sellers, maybe Julian Sayin out of Ohio State, Arch Manning out of Texas. There's a number of quarterbacks that I think are going to get pushed up to the top of that 2027 draft. Maybe this is where we see that pivot for the Steelers going out and getting a QB, unless there's some kind of remedy in the offseason.
Yeah. By the way, I really like that Velvet Rut. I'm going to steal that since everyone else is stealing.
I love
stuff
their
this
first
week.
album.
I might as well, I might as well grab that and trademark it before we get off the show here, because it's true. And it's not just a quarterback position that you're not able to draft in the top 10. This team really could have used a Malik Neighbors or a Brock Bowers or they're just consistently in the 20s and they've done okay, but this roster is in rough shape. And I think that this worked out so well for the Steelers on so many levels. They didn't have to fire Tomlin. Maybe they were thinking about, maybe they weren't, who knows, but he kind of, the way it's presented to us anyway, he took that decision off the table for them. I'm going to resign. I'm stepping down. Okay. Now you can rebuild. I don't think you would have thought about rebuilding a Tomlin comeback. You would have talked yourself into it again, like they always do. Like, oh, hey, we won 10 games, we won a division. Let's keep trying to build this thing. We still got TJ. We still got Cam. Now you could just say, you know what? It's just time. Let's kind of refresh everything around here. Maybe take a step back for a year or two. Maybe try to get that quarterback in the 2027 draft. I don't think that would have happened with Tomlin. And also him resigning instead of being fired means they could either get some assets in a trade. If somebody really, really wants them, the Raiders go crazy or something. Here's the Sean Payton package that the Broncos gave a couple years ago. Or Tomlin can't go to Baltimore. Like Tomlin, you can't just walk there. You can't just say, I'm free. Here you go. I'm going to go coach Lamar Jackson in your division. That can't happen. Now the Ravens got to hire somebody. So I think this worked out pretty well for the Steelers, where they had a pretty amicable split with one of the titans of their franchise history. They can also think about a rebuild now with a new coach. Tell him, hey, look at our history. You got time here. We're going to give you time as we reshape this whole entire roster. And maybe we do win 5 games next year, but that's okay. We're not firing you after 1 year. And it allows the Steelers to maybe even get something for Tomlin. So this, honestly, I think this is the best possible scenario for Pittsburgh.
Real quick,
you mentioned the Ravens here. Go ahead.
I was just going to say real quick, Andrew, before you chime in too. Consider the last coach who found himself in a velvet rut, right? Who sat out, right? And then came back renewed, reinvigorated, and now is sitting on top of the AFC. It was Sean Payton and the New Orleans Saints. At post Drew Brees, they found themselves kind of, they were in that velvet rut for so long. There was no way to really find his replacement. Sean took a year off, came back, reinvigorated, and look what happened. I think there's some similarities to be considered.
Could say the same about Vrabel too, right? Vrabel is in kind of a similar situation where
he got fired, though. He went to Cleveland.
You end up being in a it was different. But
yeah.
He takes a year off, and you come back in a much better situation, and now he's going to be probably coach of the year.
But Denver had to acquire the over-under, right?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
I put the over-under on AFC North coaching changes at 1.5. I took the over. I didn't know it would get to 3 when I say took the over. I'm just
way over.
Joking here among all of us. If I had told you, like, do like the old 30 for 30 ESPN voice guy. What if I told you? What if I told you that Zach Taylor is the last coach standing in the AFC North? But that is the case. Bengals fans want Zach Taylor out. They want Duke Tobin out. They want Mike Brown to spend $5 for once, other than on the coach and the quarterback and the 2 wide receivers. I get it. Zach Taylor is the last guy standing. So Cleveland has an opening. Baltimore has an opening. Pittsburgh, stunningly now, has an opening. So the news came down, just to go through the day here. Steve Bisciotti and Eric DeCosta, owner and GM of the Ravens, had their press conference scheduled at 2 p.m. So the first time that we would hear from them since the firing, surprisingly, of John Harbaugh last week. About a minute into the presser, I see the news come across my phone. Mike Tomlin is out. Can't remember who broke the news first, but somebody broke the news. Right around that time, Bisciotti's phone makes a noise on the podium. He's talking, it's audible. He goes, oops, sorry. He said, that's on me, sorry. And he turned it off. And then I'm like, wait a minute. Is that his phone blowing up with the Mike Tomlin news? Now, he didn't say, I don't know that he looked at the screen to see what the message was, or if he just like reflexively turned it off. So then the news hits. Everyone's on TV talking about Tomlin. Twitter is ablaze. People commenting on Tomlin. Steelers make their statement, blah, blah, blah. At this point, somebody about a half hour into the press conference raises their hand and finally breaks the news to Steve Bisciotti. Take a look.
Mike Tomlin stepped down at Pittsburgh.
He did? Is it official?
That's what I keep hearing. So is he a candidate here?
Holy shit, Mike, wouldn't that be awesome? Only if John takes the Pittsburgh job. Wow, wouldn't that be interesting? I don't know, that thing last week maybe disqualified him for my opening after our kicker missed a kick to let them advance. Good for Mike. Yeah, I don't know. Talk to him. I love Mike. I mean, I've admired Mike for 18 years, and that's really shocking that he did it that way. But yeah, that's kind of crazy.
It is kind of crazy. By the way, Bisciotti's presser today was as good a presser from an owner as I think I've ever heard. He is open. I mean, just like beyond candid, maybe to a fault. Joked that if Justin Tucker had been the kicker, that John Harbaugh would be the coach for at least one more week. I mean, yeah, that was kind of nutty. Said that he offered Lamar Jackson as much insight into the coaching process as he wants. But like, hey, you got to be here for these interviews. So you want to come up here? I'll give you my plane. You get on the plane to come up for every interview. Kind of like daring him, how much involvement do you really want? And also said that I told Lamar point blank that we need you to do your new contract before free agency. Like, this can't linger like it did 3 years ago. We got to know. I want you to be my quarterback, but we have to know. He also made a really interesting comment that college coaches have reached out to him about their vacancy, but they haven't reached out to college coaches. And he said that college coaching is a living hell right now. Thought that was certainly interesting. But all these jobs are open now in the AFC North. Like the power division, at least it used to be, in the AFC, or really the NFL, now is 3 coaching vacancies. And the one guy that survived didn't make the playoffs. So just put that in your pipe and smoke it. Is the Steeler job a good job? Because I don't know that it is. Now, let me explain. Organizationally, ownership, fantastic. I think, organizationally, maybe they need to catch up to the 21st century, but it's stable ownership, well-respected. anybody would want to work for the Rooneys. Amazing fan base there in Pittsburgh. Not only a national brand, but an international brand. Now, I think their fans are a bit delusional, have unreasonable expectations. It's a pretty high bar to meet and a standard to meet. Mike Tomlin felt that the last decade, but they certainly have that. But they don't, as we pointed out, C-Rob, have a long-term answer at quarterback. They're picking 21st again. I mean, they right. Annually pick 21st. It is a tradition unlike any other. That is always their pick. And they have an aging roster. I mean, it is old and it is expensive. There are now 9 jobs opening. I think Steve Bisciotti's job, the Ravens' job, because of ownership, fan base, quarterback, is one of the top 2 or 3. I don't think the Steelers is a top 2 or 3 job at all.
Well, look, it really depends what's on the table, number one, in terms of how you feel about the runway. Ownership is Class A. Like, there's just no way around looking at the Steelers' ownership and not coming to the conclusion that this is absolutely minted A-plus ownership in terms of, the role they take in football decisions,
absolutely.
How the offseason, I mean, they're great. So get beyond the ownership level, that's one of the big things that's going to be on your list of questions. Number 2 is quarterback. Okay, how do you feel about the route it's going to go to replacing the quarterback? But I think even before you get to that, what is your relationship with Omar Khan, the general manager here? Because Omar Khan needs to be focused on right now. This is going to be his first time, really choosing the head coach with ownership. And the last couple of choices have been great. Bill Cowher and Mike Tomlin on the heels of Chuck Noll. It's not often that you make choices like that. And I would say that, ownership is probably sitting there going, hey, let's go get another 20-year coach. Let's go get somebody who can win a Super Bowl and stick here and carry this culture forward. So if you're a head coach, you have to know a little bit about Omar Khan, how the two of you will function together. And then how the two of you will go to get a quarterback together and build that roster out, because it is a bit of a reset. I don't think this is going to be a deal where you're going to, suddenly hit the ground running. Really, what would be great, I think, for the Steelers is to be able to position themselves to go get I'm not saying a Ben Roethlisberger body type, but a Ben Roethlisberger who can come in the way Ben Roethlisberger did his rookie season and immediately have a semblance of standing up and success and growing into the great quarterback that he ultimately was with the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's just all about the roadmap, and I think how it goes through Omar Khan. I think it's a great job because of the fact that ownership has the track record of giving you the time to build. They've been very gracious with both their general managers and their head coaches over the years. They've gone through the dips and weathered it. I think if you get the right talent there, this can be rebuilt, and maybe you could find another 20-year head coach, but that's a hell of a challenge.
Oh, huge challenge. I think it's a great job. I really do. Not in the short term. Like there's going to be some bad seasons coming. But the reason we focus so much on how good is the roster and how good is the quarterback isn't because right now in today's age, you're getting 3 years. Most teams,
right?
Maybe 2. Like, you just don't have any time to produce a winner. So if you're stuck with a quarterback you don't like, you're in bad shape, because if you don't win in 3 years, you're done. That's not the Steelers' way. It's not going to be the Steelers' way. I can't imagine, unless you're like some Urban Meyer level disaster, I can't imagine a coach being blown out of there in 3 years. So you might get 2 quarterbacks. Like, that's how the Steelers operate. You might get 2 quarterback eras to work with. So I think you're looking at so many things other than the roster. I think everything about Pittsburgh's pretty good, as you talk about ownership, just rock steady organization. The loyalty they have to their coaches is really unmatched in American sports. Like, that does not happen anymore. So you look at all these pluses and you say, yeah, the roster needs work, but this is the NFL. Rosters turn over and turn around in 1-2 years sometimes. Look at New England. New England had a worse roster in the NFL 2 years ago. Now they're in the Final 8. Yeah. Like, it could be turned around quicker than working for a bad owner. Like, if I go to work for the Jets, I know I'm never going to get a good owner, but I might get a good roster in a couple of years.
Frank, comparatively, I'll just ask you this. Sometimes not having to have a quarterback when you walk in is a good thing, right? You're looking at Miami and you're like, I'm strapped with Tua in this Tua deal. You know, Sean Payton goes into Denver. I'm strapped with Russell Wilson and the Russell Wilson deal.
Yeah.
True,
you get it. It's a ready-made excuse.
Yeah.
You're going to say, well, I had Mason Rudolph my first year. What would you, and ownership's going to say, yeah, you're right. We'll get, and we'll draft Arch Manning this year. Whatever the path is. I think that that's absolutely true. And I just think that Pittsburgh checks every other box. Now, one thing I will say is, Andrew was right about the fans, the delusion. Maybe not delusion's the right word, but they if you go 10-7 to losing a wild card round, they're going to say, "How's this any better than Mike Tomlin?" So that's a tough one. The bar is very, very high in Pittsburgh now. That puts a lot of pressure on the coach right away, but ownership doesn't feel that pressure, and I think that's a huge, huge, huge plus for any coaching candidate that doesn't get that in any other NFL city.
And I have no doubt that, that clip will be taken out of context if posted socially here when I say, I don't think it's a good job at all. I'm not saying. I
gotta listen to Renegade every Sunday. Can you imagine the horror of having to listen to Renegade over and over?
Renegade, by the way, playing in the Texans locker room after the game. True story. I gave you all the reasons, all three of us did, why this is a Keystone franchise. Keystone State. Didn't mean to do that, but there we are. And any coach would want to work in this environment for this ownership group and for that fan base. Absolutely. A lot of coaches also could say, well, hey, look at the Falcons. I got all these pieces there. I could jump in tomorrow and win and have a fan base that is not nearly as passionate. I would say downright apathetic at times, and I won't feel the pressure, but I got the pieces to get in there in a bad division and win immediately. And they may view that job short term as a better job. It's all what you're looking for. It's all in the eye of the beholder. There are only 32 of these things. And you ask any coach, hey, pretty cool to have on your resume, I'm the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's one you want. Absolutely. Just that roster right now is in bad need of a makeover. And that stat blew me away. I heard, Frank, you kind of gasped there. In their 7 consecutive playoff losses, in each of those games, they trailed at one point by 21 points. Some of those games were a lot closer on the final score. They were blown out of the building at points in all 7 of those games. They have not been competitive. Last night was competitive until the fourth quarter, obviously, but that Texans defense was, you say, what are the 4 best units on the field? Rank them offense, defense. The Texans defense was number 1 and nothing else mattered. That was it. They were dominant. Matt Burke should be a head coach next year. Now, can he take Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson and Jalen Petrie with him? I'm not sure. But what he did, what DeMeco Ryans did, is fantastic, and they won despite C.J. Stroud. That team could very easily go to the Super Bowl. I assume, actually, do we have time? We got a minute. Aaron Rodgers deserves more than a minute, so let's move that to our next conversation. Because I think we saw the end of Aaron Rodgers last night. But then I listened to Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah give their end of the season press conference this morning about an hour before the Tomlin news. And I think Aaron Rodgers is going to play again next year. That's coming up next on Inside Coverage. It's Inside Coverage here on Yahoo. Andrew Siciliano and our senior writers Charles Robinson and Frank Schwab. This was supposed to be an Aaron Rodgers show today. What to do with the Steelers? Mike Tomlin's not going anywhere. Is Aaron Rodgers back? Do you want him back? Obviously, now Mike Tomlin is out of here. He said, peace, thank you, told the team, and he is out the door. So now what happens with your old quarterback, who looked overmatched last night, to be fair? A lot of people look overmatched against that Houston defense. It's the same system, the exact same system, because Matt Burke, former disciple, former assistant under Jim Schwartz, same system the Browns run, and the results were kind of similar to what Rodgers had a couple of weeks ago in Cleveland. He's old, he can't move, everything goes outside the numbers. Granted, DK Metcalf dropping that ball on the sideline could have changed things a little bit, but it didn't happen. Rodgers, after the game, guys, gave no indication that he is ready to quit. I think, and Kyle Brandt made a great point this morning, this guy's got no kids. It's not like family is pulling him back. I think there's a good chance he may play again. I don't know that Pittsburgh is going to want him again. I'm going to going to make my prediction right now. After listening to Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah this morning in their end presser in Minneapolis after the Vikings failed to make the playoffs after J.J. McCarthy had an kind of season, and when both of them stressed the need for depth, i.e. competition in the quarterback room, they did this dance last year. My question is, Aaron Rodgers does not retire. He is a Minnesota Viking next year.
Very interesting. That's an interesting one.
Completing that Brett Favre circle.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean,
because C-Rob, he wanted to do it last year.
Aaron did. Yeah. I mean, there was no doubt that Aaron wanted it. It would be an interest. I will say this for Minnesota. It would be an interesting way to thread the needle, because even if you brought Rodgers in for competition, it doesn't take McCarthy completely out of the fold forever, right? Because last year, it's McCarthy's, you're 2 years into his career. You don't have to make a decision on his fifth-year option for a while. So you could bring in, let's say, a Rodgers in 2026, see how it goes. Rodgers, I think Rodgers has said, look, football's fun for him again. That kind of changed the idea of this being, this last run, or at least the definitive idea that, okay, this was going to be the last year for him. So if you're Minnesota, you could bring him in, have sort of the competitive environment. All of a sudden you see McCarthy would sort of slide into the Jordan Love backup spot where, okay, hey, you're going to potentially get another shot at this. If Aaron Rodgers retires after the 2026 season and we feel good about you, 2027 could be your second shot at ultimately that job. And it could be good, I think, for J.J. McCarthy to sit behind an Aaron Rodgers, learn things. I think Rodgers, to me, showed a heck of a lot in his handling of Zach Wilson with the New York Jets. Zach himself said, I've even today, still looks at Aaron Rodgers like he's a big brother. It would be a very interesting threading of the needle. The only concern I would have is Minnesota better get the offensive line completely right. And I know injuries had a lot to do with the protection problems that they had last year, but Aaron Rodgers would have gotten destroyed behind that Minnesota Vikings offensive line at times last season. They're not going to have the mobility of a J.J. McCarthy. As bad as J.J. McCarthy was at times, at least he had the mobility to run away. Aaron Rodgers does not have at this point in the career. If anything, he's getting rid of the ball faster than ever to make sure he doesn't get touched. I would just say that the Vikings, clearly they want competition at the position. You better make sure the offensive line is right if you go and get the type of competition that does not have the mobility of your current starter.
Yeah, I mean, it's all pretty interesting, all pretty. Aaron Rodgers and the Vikings would be such an unbelievable storyline. Just, again, following that Brett Favre path and getting into that rivalry and making Packers fans mad at him, too, like they were at Brett for a while. I don't know that he comes back, just because he's a very self-aware guy. We all know that. And you're tempting fate. He played so well at age 42, considering the history. The only guy who would come close to where he was as a quarterback is Tom Brady, who just did it year after year because he's Tom Brady. And you could see it. And Charles, you just talked about this. Like, he wanted to get rid of the ball. He didn't want to get hit. And I don't blame him. He's a 42-year-old man. I don't want to get trucked by Will Anderson 10 times a game. Like, what fun is that? Kenneth Gainwell had about 11 billion catches in the last month of the season. And what's the point in Aaron Rodgers coming back? Like, I mean, play until you want to play. That's great. And he showed he's still got something left. But I wonder if you come back at age 43, if you're having that final Johnny Unitas season, if you're having that final Brett Favre season where the wheels just kind of fall off. I don't know that he wants that. It's interesting, though. I mean, if the opportunity presents itself with the Vikings, man, that would give us something to talk about all summer, wouldn't it? That'd be fun. But I don't know. I feel like you keep pushing. Whoa, I played pretty well this year. I got one more year left in me. You never know. That cliff comes pretty soon, especially when you're 43 years old. So we'll see. But he's obviously, the fact that he's left the door open after pretty much before the season saying, nah, I think this will probably be it. We'll see. And now he's kind of left the door open. It makes him very fascinating for the next few months.
Do we agree that if I'm the Steelers, in all likelihood, with Tomlin out, it doesn't make sense anymore. I don't think Aaron would necessarily want to go back there either. Want to play something from last night. So Rodgers didn't really give much insight on the podium after the game as to whether or not he wants to play again. He said he doesn't want to make an emotional decision. He's going to, think about it a little bit. Hopefully it doesn't take months and months and months. Free agency begins in the middle of March, as it always does. he was asked, did you enter the stadium today thinking this is going to be your last game? He said, I always do so thinking it's going to be my last game. But then he was asked about Mike Tomlin, and he talked about Tomlin, but also brought in his former head coach. Take a listen.
I mean, this league has changed a lot in my 21 years. When you hear a conversation about the Mike Tomlins of the world, Matt LaFleur's of the world, those are just two that kind of I've played for. And when I first got in the league, there wouldn't be conversation about whether those guys were on the hot seat, but the way that the league is covered now and the way that there's snap decisions and the validity given to the Twitter experts and all the, experts on TV now who make it seem like they know what the hell they're talking about. To me, that's an absolute joke. And for either of those two guys to be on the hot seat is really apropos of where we're at as a society and a league, because obviously Matt's done a lot of great things in Green Bay and we had a lot of success. Mike T has had more success than damn near anybody in the league, for the last 19, 20 years. And more than that, though, when you have the right guy and the culture is right, you don't think about making a change. But there's a lot of pressure that comes from the outside, and obviously that sways decisions from time to time, but it's not how I would do things and not how the league used to be.
Charles, your facial reaction earns you the first response.
I mean, look, he's right about Tomlin being great coach. He's right about Matt LaFleur being a good coach. He's right that it's, the idea that we discussed this idea that guys are on a hot seat. I get it. I understand where this is coming from. It's emotional for him because he's played for these guys and he knows what the hell he's talking about on almost all things football. But I'm sorry. This is football history according to Aaron. It's not right. Okay? Don Shula, the winningest coach in NFL history, won over 70 games in his first 7 seasons with the Baltimore Colts. He lost to the New York Jets in Super Bowl III. That was considered one of the biggest losses, even to this day, the most unbelievable upsets in NFL history. It pissed off his owner. He was on the hot seat the following year. He missed the playoffs, and then the Colts didn't end up signing him to a new contract. He signed with the Miami Dolphins, but he was on the hot seat. He was known as a guy who couldn't win the big one. That was in the 60s. We're talking about the 60s spanning into the 70s, okay? Aaron Rodgers gets drafted. Just prior to Aaron Rodgers getting drafted, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers fired Tony Dungy because he could not get his offense right in 6 very good seasons in Tampa Bay, and he was very much on the hot seat by the time he ultimately got fired. Marty Schottenheimer, the year after Aaron Rodgers came into the league, went 14-2 for the San Diego Chargers, lost in the first round of the playoffs, ultimately gets fired by ownership because he could not turn this team into a Super Bowl winning team, and A.J. Brown, the general manager, and he could not get along. He gets fired. 14-2. Marty Schottenheimer, one of the greatest coaches in history, won 200 regular season games, never coaches again in the NFL, and absolutely was a hot seat guy because he could not get that team ultimately to the Super Bowl. Andy Reid, 2011, 2012, Andy Reid gets fired by the Philadelphia Eagles, was on the hot seat because Andy Reid could not ultimately get it done with the Philadelphia Eagles. You cannot tell me over the course of history that good coaches do not end up on the hot seat and fired. And you can blame it on the media. You can blame it on outside the Twitter sphere, things that didn't exist when Don Shula couldn't win the big one with the Baltimore Colts. And yet we still see this happen now. So it should look, I respect Aaron. I respect that Aaron has opinions. But in NFL history, this is a cycle. It happens with quarterbacks who are great and ultimately end up on the outs. It happens with great coaches who are great and ultimately end up on the outs. And by the way, he talks about, especially when teams have like a good culture going and everything. And I guess he includes Matt LaFleur and the Green Bay Packers in that. It wasn't that long ago that he was calling Green Bay's culture corporate and leaving.
Yeah. And Mike Silver, by the way, friend of the program, Mike Silver, in The Athletic today, was able to get a hold of Matt LaFleur and said, LaFleur said to Silver via text, basically, that he was stunned and flattered. And it meant the world that Aaron said that Didn't see that coming, but yeah, Aaron threw his old head coach in Green Bay, with whom he did not necessarily get along at first, some flowers. And as for Marty Schottenheimer, go back to his Cleveland days, 86, 87.
Kansas City.
He took the Browns to the AFC Championship game. 88, they were one and done, and he gets fired. So then Bud Carson came in. It was Bud Carson who took the team to the 89 AFC Championship game. He, too, lost to the Denver Broncos. If I have one more person ask me, by the way, hey, have you seen Elway yet on Netflix? The answer is no. He ruined my childhood. I am not going to watch Elway on Netflix. I love the people at Netflix. They do a great job. I hope they continue to expand their sports portfolio. I look forward to working with them one day. But no, I am not watching Elway on Netflix because he ruined my childhood. And Rich Carlis all but admitted this week on a podcast, he didn't say no, that the kick was no good. He didn't say no. He said, well, the official underneath it said it was good. He had the best angle.
Andrew.
I digress.
Andrew, my advice, okay? You don't have to watch the whole thing.
Yeah.
Don't watch the first.
Don't tell me to get over it, Charles.
No, I'm not at all. Not at all.
Okay.
Just watch the first 3 minutes to see his lake house. It's unbelievable. It is.
I'm sure he's got a lovely lake house.
Unbelievable lake house. You need to see the first 3 minutes at least to see that. My God.
Kirk Cousins had a lovely backyard on the lake as well. On the quarterback
no,
show
not like this.
On Netflix.
Not like this.
Okay.
This is
I'm
different.
sure it's beautiful. John's a nice guy. I've always had good interactions with him. He still ruined my childhood. I digress. Anything to add there on Aaron Rodgers, Frank?
No, I think that your point of like Aaron Rodgers not returning to the Steelers, you listen to that clip again, now knowing what we know, that Tomlin wasn't going to be there. And why would Aaron come back? Like he had made a point many, many times that he really enjoyed the idea of playing for Tomlin and how much he respected Tomlin. And Aaron's not trying to deal with some new coach and new culture in Pittsburgh. I just can't imagine a scenario where he's back there unless he really, really, really wants to play. And the Steelers really, really, really need a quarterback. And they just kind of like what happened in the offseason where they're both the last two people at the bar closing time. And it's like, well, all right, let's get together.
Listen, if the Packers lose Malik Willis, there's always a backup spot in Green Bay.
Oh man, you are wow.
I'm just saying.
That'd be even crazier than him going to the Vikings. Like that would be wild, absolutely wild.
I think I could have it. Just my gut. All right, let's move on because there are some coordinator moves as well today. Not surprisingly, Kevin Patullo is out as the offensive coordinator in Philadelphia. And not surprisingly, Greg Roman is out as the offensive coordinator up the road from where I sit right now in LA with the Chargers. Mike Devlin, the offensive line coach, is also out in LA. Jim Harbaugh has had Greg Roman as his OC wherever he has been an NFL head coach, whether it be in San Francisco, and it came that close to winning a Super Bowl. He should not have called timeout running down the sideline when Kaepernick had that keeper in the red zone. They would have won, but he did. Regardless. Anyway, so Greg Roman is out there as well. Let's start with Patullo. I still think that where there's smoke, there's fire. Something could happen at quarterback, but none of us are surprised. I'd have to imagine, without putting words in either of your mouths, that Kevin Patullo is out. It also means if Jalen Hurts is the quarterback, he is going to have yet another OC. I believe it's 5 in 5 years, something like that. Go back to college, like 7 in 7 years. I mean, that's not sustainable, C-Rob.
No, it's crazy, especially when you consider that with each of those coordinators, very often you really are throwing the offense out. You're saying, okay, learn the new scheme. Here's how we want the terminology. Here's just the multitude of changes that really come with it. And then the thing that people don't talk about enough, I think, because we focus so much on the X's and O's and the multitude of different playbooks he's had to get under his arm, is what about the relationship? What about having a personal relationship with an offensive coordinator for longer than 1 year? Okay, building some trust, knowing how games ultimately want to be called. I think, to me, that is what is really interesting when you go back and you look at some of these documentary style pieces that get done, let's say on like the Patriots or a multitude of other really successful teams, is you saw the bond that Josh McDaniels and Tom Brady built over an expanse of years, right? And just the knowledge of a quarterback being able to affect the offense because the offensive coordinator trusts him, and the offensive coordinator being able to convince the quarterback to run certain things because the quarterback trusts his OC. And, I thought it was interesting when Jared Goff was talking about like Ben Johnson. I remember at one point, it was during the quarterback's documentary on Netflix, there was a point where Jared Goff is sitting there and he sees something happen in the game they're playing, and he's thinking in his mind, he said, I was hoping Jared would call this exact play for the scenario. And that's exactly what came into his headset. And I thought that is the invaluable part of this that gets lost in all of these constant changes with Jalen Hurts and that offensive coordinator position, is you just lose the relationship and the wiring to know how the two can move in a dance from one year to the next and make each other better as you move on. They really need some consistency at that spot. And it's hard for me to put that all on Jalen Hurts.
As we talked about, is the Pittsburgh Steelers head coaching job a good job? Is the Eagles offensive coordinator job a good job? Because you look at it, you're like, oh yeah, they got all these stars and they were in the Super Bowl last year. Jalen Hurts didn't have a very good season. And he isn't one of those elite guys. He's a guy you have to kind of scheme around, right? Wait, well, you got A.J. Brown. Well, you might not have A.J. Brown. We don't know what his future is like. Saquon Barkley is going to be 29. And after a 482 touch season, he took a major step back last year. There's no guarantee Saquon Barkley rebounds. And Dallas Goedert's going to be 30. And Lane Johnson, I believe, is going to be 36. And I don't know if you're like a Mike McDaniel, let's say, or whatever offensive coordinator is, they're going to be a hot coordinator. I'd rather have the Lions job, right? Like, because there's just a lot more limitations with the Eagles offense than we saw a year ago.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, they have weapons.
You're more fireable too.
Yeah. I mean, even with Dan Campbell there, they were scoring 30 points a game. Even with him calling plays down the stretch, I'd rather have that job as well. What about the Chargers job? Because Harbaugh wants to run the ball, but you have a golden god standing back there. At least you have a quarterback you made in a lab in Justin Herbert, who in the playoffs has not necessarily played like the cyborg that you hoped he would be. I know they have offensive line issues. I know that everybody was hurt. The Charger fans in my life, there are a few, some exist, say, yeah, but they should have been able to work around that. Like, there's no way that they couldn't work around that. The New England defense is good. Like on paper, other than Christian Gonzalez, aren't a lot of guys that scare you. Milton Williams, maybe one of those guys as well. Give him his credit. But they could do nothing. And Greg Roman has become predictable. And they didn't have Omarion Hampton and their top two tackles. I get it. But where do they go now, C-Rob?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. And it's a lot of that has to do with, as you said, Greg Roman, all the iterations, that he's been with Harbaugh. You felt like the offenses looked very similar. It wasn't like there was this huge turn into creativity. But I do question, if you're the Chargers, how do you really know how creative you can be when you can't keep the offense? You need that offensive line, which could be great. You need it to be healthy for a season to figure out what can we heap on to Justin Herbert at this point. Can we throw a ton of RPO on him and use every facet of his game and get super creative? They have a good set of skill position players. Marion Hampton was banged up this year. I just feel like so many of the assets weren't on the field to fully tell what exactly can you do with these players, that it's going to be interesting to see who they ultimately choose to take that spot over. I don't think that offense was nearly as bad as it played out with the injuries over the course of the season. But if you stack up the depth chart, depending how you feel about certain players, like a Keenan Allen, how much is really left there? Is Ladd McConkey what he was in 2024, or is he, what he was in 2025? What will Hampton look like with a fully healthy season? I think there's a lot to work with there for the next OC, but it's just one of those things where the injuries just make it so hard to measure precisely what kind of a scheme you can run and have, Justin Herbert comfortable with it while also keeping him healthy.
Yeah, I think it's an excellent job because of you look at the talent. Like what happened to Ladd McConkey this year? Go back and unlock him from his rookie year. Omarion Hampton looked great when he was healthy. Now couldn't stay healthy. If those two offensive tackles come back, and I assume they will, like the offensive line gets calmed down a lot. And Justin Herbert's a great quarterback.
Aronde Gadsden,
yeah, everything seems to be on the table for the Chargers.
Trey Harris as well.
Yeah,
Joe
and
yesterday, three really good offensive
they
pieces.
They got a ton of guys. And as I said yesterday, and I'll say it again, if the Chargers manage to keep Jesse Minter through this cycle, I think the Chargers can win a Super Bowl.
Think they will?
I already said I don't know. There's so many good defensive minds in this cycle that maybe he's a guy who just gets lost in the mix because somebody prefers Saleh, somebody prefers Shula, somebody prefers Hafley. I don't know, but if they could just keep Minter, you hire a good offensive coordinator, maybe Mike McDaniel, who we just talked about. I think the Chargers can win a Super Bowl, and doesn't that look good on your resume when you want to go get a head coaching job? So I think the Chargers offensive coordinator job is very, very attractive right now.
Yeah, I think it is as well, just because you have the chance to work with Justin Herbert. Who wouldn't want to work with Justin Herbert? Jim Harbaugh.
You could be the guy to unlock his playoff success. You know, you could be that guy.
Yes,
like it's a good job. No. There's a lot of upside to that job, I think.
I did not in any way mean to suggest it wasn't a good job. I think it is, certainly, because you have Justin Herbert. Your success with the Chargers, like your success with any of the other 31 teams, will be judged on what we do in the postseason, what we do in that opening round, because they are consistent, one and done. And this was before Harbaugh. Obviously, it's not Harbaugh's fault that they 3 years ago, 4 years ago, whatever it is now, go to Jacksonville and they blow that lead in the second half. That was Brandon Staley. That was not Jim Harbaugh. But Justin Herbert now is heading into year seven, right? As I count on my fingers here.
I thought it was 8, but he's been around the block for not having any playoff wins. I'll tell you that.
He's been around the block. All right, let's look at the clock here. We're good. Let's do the panic meter coming up next. Frank has a column on Yahoo right now that you got to read. We'll give you 2 minutes to read it, and then we'll be back and we'll do the panic meter, like the thing on the jumbotron, okay, like the fanometer, the panic meter for teams that are already out of the postseason. Don't go anywhere. Inside coverage. So the one theme that hit, by the way, welcome back to Inside Coverage, hit me as I watched Wild Card Weekend, Andrew, Charles, Frank, is just how amazing playoff football is to be in the building. Like when you're actually in the building, that emotion of being a fan, that roller coaster, it's unlike anything in American professional sports. Now, at the same time, when you lose that finality, that realization for both fans and in the locker room and the entire organization, that there is no game tomorrow. Like, it's over. Like, all your hard work for the last really 12 months, because when you lost last year, that work begins anew. All that work, it's over. Like, it's done. And now you have to look to next year. So that's why you also go to Yahoo and you read Frank Schwab's panic meter column for the teams that get knocked out. Let's start with the Panthers. They're a nice story. Frank, they won a bad division. Bryce Young made some plays, especially in the loss on Saturday. Where would you put the Panthers' panic meter now as they head into the offseason?
Not much. They finally have something to feel good about. And the fact that it was reported that Bryce Young's going to have his 5th-year option picked up kind of reinforces that they feel like they're going in the right direction, that they feel like Bryce Young can improve. And he does need to improve, by the way. He didn't have a great season. He was okay. Barely got over 3,000 yards. He's still some growth to happen there. But you look and, Tedero McMillan and Jalen Coker and some of the guys on defense, they are building something. The only issue I would have with the Panthers, the only worry I have with them is they weren't that good, right? Like, I mean, they're an 8-9 football team that did lose, despite giving the Rams a really good challenge in the playoffs, is that they think they've made it. Like, oh, wow, we're on the right track. We could just run it back with this team. Still a lot of improvement to be made, even though you made the playoffs because you played in the NFC South. But after years and years and years of just futility, this has to feel great for the Panthers. And there is some real momentum there, I think, with that roster.
Yeah, I mean, I look... Here's the thing about the Panthers I would feel really excited about. Bryce Young's not on the scrap heap, right? They didn't know that coming into this season. That was a tremendous fear, and quarterback has been a tremendous fear forever under David Tepper, the owner of the Panthers. And this was the first season where I think they saw the flashes where they said, wait a minute, okay, this is workable. We have a head coach who, in Dave Canales, who he's connecting with. It was still a roller coaster. But then when you looked at the skill position pieces around him as well, I think they're really excited about the youth they have there and the growth that's coming. Obviously, Ted McMillan, the wide receiver, who's probably going to win Offensive Rookie of the Year this year. Everybody's going to be talking about him. But Jalen, go back and watch Jalen Coker, okay? In that loss to the Rams. Took him a long
time to figure out he's our number 2, but
he was. It did. It took him a long time, but I think that was it. I think that was the stamp where you're like, this guy is eating people up right now. You look like T. Higgins out there at times. And then I think you look to Jatavian Sanders at tight end. I don't even know if that kid's 21. He's like 21, 22 years old. He's been in the league a couple of years at the tight end spot. I think, look, Chuba Hubbard, obviously in the backfield. It sounds like Rico Dowdle might go elsewhere in free agency, but you still have Jonathan Brooks, who you drafted out of Texas in the second round, who's obviously had knee injuries. We don't know what his NFL career can even look like at this point. Yeah, I mean, we don't even know if it will continue. We're going to have to see now how he comes off that second straight ACL in the same knee. But again, I just think offensively, and look, that's not even talking about defensively. Defense is aggressive. The secondary looks, I mean, they held their own in a lot of spots. At least they competed at times with the Rams. I think there's so much to look forward to there. And Dan Morgan, I'll say this, huge plus I would put in their ledger is when I went in there and I talked to Dan Morgan about this team coming into this season, he predicted a lot of this stuff, and I didn't believe it. I was just like, come on, man. He's, saying, hey, David Tepper's he knows now what he's got to do. He's going to take a little bit of a step back. Like, we're going to be fine here. You're going to see Bryce is going to have growth this season with Dave Canales. He thought Ted McMillan was going to be out of the box, a guy that was going to be 1,000-yard receiver. A lot of the things that Dan believed were going to happen this team did take place. And so I think the general manager, head coach alignment, having some hope at quarterback and having a ton of talent, I think, on that roster, both offensively and defensively, you should feel pretty good. I don't think there's a lot of panic there right now.
Yeah, tip the cap to that entire crew. I've said before, I saw them, was there for a joint practice back in the summer. I didn't think they were that good, but they won a division. Who cares who else is in your division, what your record is? You won a division, and you had some statement victories. You beat the Rams in the regular season. You beat the Packers at Lambeau in the regular season. It's not as if you just beat up on a bunch of bad teams and then somehow got in. They had some signature wins. I also say tip of the cap to Ejiro Evero. I know he's under some fire for the way Matthew Stafford marched down the field on that final drive to steal the win on Saturday, but he knew something, and he's not the only former Rams assistant on that defensive staff. You have Jonathan Cooley in the secondary as well. You have Nick Scott. You have Christian Roseboom. You have Bobby Brown. The institutional knowledge the Panthers had on that side of the ball, I think, went a long way towards them not only beating the Rams in the regular season, but almost pulling it off in the postseason as well. So good coaching matters, and that team was well coached this year. Dave Canales is an interesting guy. Maybe not the most... He's not the loudest on the podium, probably not the loudest in the locker room either, but both he and his DC got the most out of what they had this year, and they won a division. I would not in any way be panicking. I'm not entirely sold that Bryce Young is the long-term future, but he played well this year when they needed him to play well, and he certainly has earned the right to come back and earn the right for that fifth-year option. Panic meter now, Frank, for Jacksonville. What do you think?
I think that we need to know that, first of all, the Jacksonville Jaguars season was not fluky. They were really, really good, especially over the second half of the season. 1-8 in a row. Yeah. Trevor Lawrence, real progress there we saw when it finally clicked with Liam Cohen. There was some arguments early in the year from the sideline to the field we even saw. Like, it wasn't out in private. It was in public. But it really seemed that Liam Cohen's everything clicked, right? But I do have to warn, there's the plexiglass principle. Once you improve so much from year to year, really the only place to go is down. They went from 4 wins to 13. You're not going to go to 16, 17 wins like that. That's just not going to happen. So I do worry about a little bit of regression that way. But I think Jacksonville's on the right path. That defense was very good at taking advantage of turnovers and causing them. The offense looked really good in many ways. They got more receivers and they know what to do with. They did all this without Travis Hunter, really. When they got hot, it was with Travis Hunter on IR. He comes back next year. What role we'll see. You got to like what the Jaguars are doing. I just don't panic next year if they take a step back to, let's say, 10 wins, because that's perfectly realistic once you improve so much one year to the other. Look at the Commanders. So, but overall, I think the Jaguars are on better footing than they've been in many, many, many years.
That was the plexiglass principle, not to be confused.
Plexiglass, it's a Bill James thing. It's a
principle.
It is a baseball thing. It is a baseball thing there, Andrew. Look it up. Bill James came up with this. If you improve so much from year to year, you're going to come back to earth a little bit. It happens every time. It's probably going to happen with the Jaguars, but that doesn't mean they're a bad football team all of a sudden. It just means this is normal regression.
I just wanted to work Miss Jackson, if you're nasty, into the show. See you, Rob.
Rhythm Nation, everybody.
All right, he can quote Bill James. I'll go to Charles Robinson's trapdoor theory, which is every single time I believe the Jacksonville Jaguars are finally getting there and turning the corner, that trapdoor opens and
they go into the velvet rut.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm looking at, hey, they lose to the Chiefs. I'm like, no, Doug Peterson's. I'm talking him up. Doug Peterson's got him going the right place, and everything. And the next thing I know, he and the GM are basically having open warfare, at press conferences, and everything falls apart. Oh, they went and got Urban Meyer. All I hear about is how he builds cultures and he does this and that. And, so I will just say, there's no panic here, right? Like I liked watching Jacksonville. They were a lot of fun, and everything I've heard about, the offense that, Liam Cohen runs and really when you see the quarterback in Trevor Lawrence mold into it over the course of the season, from what I've been told from other people across the league, is he in year 2, when he really has that mastery of that offense. And I've heard the same thing with like Kevin O'Connell, some of Kyle Shanahan, the same with the Sean McVay tree. Really in year 2, that's when the quarterback starts to feel super confident and you see even more growth. So that makes me feel great. I don't feel any panic. It's just a little bit of apprehension, because every time I feel like, hey, the Jacksonville Jaguars are finally pulling it all together, something goes sideways. I think what's different here is that we saw defensively, especially against the run, we just saw strides in so many different areas for the Jaguars. I'm curious what they do with Brian Thomas Jr., because to me now all of a sudden, especially if you're still using Travis Hunter both ways, you have this packed wide receiving room with Parker Washington, to me, looking like, hey, maybe he's the dominant guy there. You make a trade for a wide receiver. You have Brian Thomas Jr. from last year, who looked like he was going to be a number 1. So there's still some things I think ultimately to sort out, even though, the running game there long term, where is that going with ETN? So there's
free agent.
I feel good about him. I'm not panicked, but I just want to hold back here and see some consistency. Just like Frank said, let's see consistency from one year to the next.
Year 2 of the offense really was the second half of the year for Trevor Lawrence.
Right.
The light came on, and he was a more aggressive quarterback, and he was the guy. Trevor Etienne. Yeah, Etienne on his exit interview yesterday was asked, what do you need to see from Trevor Lawrence next year, assuming you're back as well. And I'm not gonna totally quote him, but he basically said he needs to let the stones hit the table. I don't know. Is that the right way to say it? He needs to.
Let's go with that.
Yes. Yeah, I don't know. Just Google
and
it.
He did. I will say I understand what he's. I understand what he's saying, because
totally
the whole time, for years
let
with
your
Trevor,
hair fly.
it's like,
how about that?
Yes. With Trevor, there were
let
just
that glorious mane fly.
There were so many times where you're like, show emotion, man. Like blow up, flip out. Do something that makes us go, okay. It doesn't always have to be just this even keel. Sometimes get in people's face. And there were times, you saw little clips here and there where they're like, okay, whoa, look at Trevor Lawrence in this pregame speech to the team, where I'm like, oh, that's more emotion than I remember really seeing from him. I get what ETN's saying.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you search for words to describe uncomfortable things, sometimes you just call it like it is. Like during the Browns-Bengals Week 18 game, Browns scored 2 touchdowns. Devin Bush and Sam Webb, one a pick six, one a scoop and score, and both of them they were flagged and subsequently fined. Both of them, when they got to the end zone, did the Marshawn Lynch thing, falling backwards across the goal line. How do you describe that? I could say they went beast mode. And I tried to describe it in a classy manner. Then for Webb, I just said, he grabbed himself. That's what he did. And he got fined for it. Now, I don't understand why Devin Bush was fined more than Sam Webb. It's pretty much the same thing. Devin's with a little more alacrity than Sam Webb's. But they both did the same thing. You know?
That's actually, honestly, I kind of want the answer for that. Like, I would like to know exactly when you're weighing those two fines.
Do you guys like was Lost in Translation?
Did you grab yourself?
Lost in Translation when Bill Murray is doing the Santori time commercial, right? He's got his cup here.
Yeah.
And it's like, Ray's got his cup of scotch, right? And the Japanese director keeps coming over going, with more intensity, right?
More intensity. Yeah, that's great.
So maybe Devin Bush did it with more
intensity, grabbing yourself.
Intensity.
Vigor.
But the Browns won a game where the only two touchdowns were defensive touchdowns. Kind of like the Texans yesterday. 2 defensive touchdowns. And we'll figure the rest out offensively. Honestly, as a Browns fan, that's what made it so frustrating last night. You're looking at the same damn defense, okay? Like, Texans were number 1, Browns were top 5. Just get the offense right. Like, you could be in the playoffs. Like, they wanted 2 defensive touchdowns. Anyway, I digress. Frank, give me 30 seconds panic meter on the Packers.
I think there's a little bit. I don't think that. I mean, we don't know how Micah Parsons comes back. We don't even know what's going on with Matt LaFleur. It all of a sudden seems like a team that should be on more solid ground, but might not be. They were 9-8-1. Like, it is. I don't know that it's necessarily just this crazy bounce back for the Packers. I just think they might be stuck in the velvet rut, Charles. They might be stuck in the velvet rut where they're just good and never going to be great. I think that's a real fear of Green Bay.
That's going to be our companion podcast, The Velvet Rut.
The Velvet Rut.
Yeah. I'm with Frank, though. I think, I wouldn't say a ton, but there's some major issues there. Obviously, what's going to happen with Matt LaFleur is one. And then I'm concerned. Let's see what Micah looks like when he comes back from the injury. I covered the game, and I remember thinking to myself at one point, a couple of throws that Caleb made, especially the one to Roma Dunze, I'm like, you went and got the guy who is probably as fast as Caleb and could have chased him on that play and could have shut that down.
Charles. Yeah.
That's what I thought. Yeah, I'm like, that's where Micah was missing. Maybe this 4th and 8 doesn't occur and things are totally different. But, Matthew Golden made a play. There were some things I thought for the Packers where you're like, okay, some other guys are flashing. This isn't like a total panic situation, but let's see what Micah looks like next year and if Matt LaFleur's coaching him.
Greatest closing speed I have ever seen in person was Micah Parsons on a Thursday night game in 2021 in New Orleans on Taysom Hill. It took your breath away, his closing speed, to get from the line of scrimmage to 9 yards deep in the backfield where Hill was running away from somebody else and he got him. And it's just like, he is that fast. Yeah, he is. All right, let's do one more thing here before we go. And actually, Charles, considering our last topic there, I think it ties it nicely. You go first.
Yeah, you look at with what happened today with Mike Tomlin, obviously resigning from his duties with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and it blows my mind. But now when you talk about the top 5 longest tenured coaches in the NFL, right? You have Andy Reid, of course, everybody knows. Sean McVay's been around. Kyle Shanahan, of course. Sean McDermott, another one there with the Bills, who they're all bunched up in the top 4. Tied for 5th is actually Zach Taylor of the Cincinnati Bengals and Matt LaFleur of the Green Bay Packers. When you just think about that, Zach Taylor, you're tied for the 5th longest. It is quite interesting, and it really makes you think about that AFC North, where all of a sudden it's just complete chaos from a coaching standpoint, and the guy who's standing there amidst the rubble is Zach Taylor, your 5th longest tied, but your 5th longest tenured coach in the NFL.
And the guy left standing in the AFC North has missed the playoffs the last 3 years. Just consider. Frank Schwab, one more thing.
Man. If the news cycle hadn't gone ballistic today, I think we would have paid a little more attention to a really, really cool comeback in San Francisco Fred Warner, their linebacker, who dislocated and broke his ankle in week 6, had his practice window open today. And there's been murmurs and speculation that he might come back. And even he has said, I think I can come back this year. They're being coy about whether he's going to play this weekend. I don't even care. I don't care if Fred Warner doesn't make it back this week or even this season. I just wanted to give a tip of the cap to this great comeback. One of the great players in the NFL, one of the most fun guys to watch, great off the field, all that kind of stuff. Just really, really impressed with Fred Warner. Happy for him that he's in a place where he can even practice and think about playing this weekend. And if he does come back this weekend, man, great comeback story, one way or another for Fred Warner. Just happy to see him back on the practice field this week.
Tyreek Hill asked for the number for his trainers. Tyreek Hill's like, who are your trainers, man? Like he asked him on social media.
I can't believe he's back. After that injury, I cannot believe he's back.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
Tyreek Hill's injury also, by the way, one of the more uncomfortable watching an injury moments of this past season. Like, oof, oh my God, did that his leg just go the other way? Like that was, and Quinshon Judkins as well, who amazingly did not suffer any knee damage during his when his leg went the other way against the Bills a couple of weeks ago. Anyway, my one more thing is also injury related. It actually has to do with a game on Sunday with an injury, not George Kittle, but Tyrell Shavers, who's a wide receiver for the Buffalo Bills. He tore his ACL. He is done for the year. But what is absurd is that he basically played the entire second half on a torn ACL. He played 22 of the team's 34 snaps, 65% of their snaps in the second half with an ACL that he tore in the first half. It's not exactly, Ronnie Lott cutting the pinky off, but, I mean, that is ridiculous. He played the second half on a torn ACL. So tip of the cap to Tyrell Shavers. The Bills are banged up. They lost Gabe Davis as well. Josh Allen, hey, he wins without wide receivers. Well, he's going to have to do that again this week against Pat Surtain and Riley Moss and the Denver Broncos in Denver. All right, friends, this was fun. Coming up tomorrow, Quentin Lake of the Rams will join us. We'll ask him, how do you stop Caleb Williams and deal with Ben Johnson and everything he'll throw at you schematically, but also how do you get ready for a game in 75-degree weather that's going to be played in 0-degree weather. Quentin Lake on the show on Wednesday. For Charles Robinson and for Frank Schwab, my name is Andrew Siciliano. Thanks for joining us today on Inside Coverage.